Hello. Hello. Can you hear me, Vivian? But I'm gonna record this, and I have been doing this for so long. I'm Rebecca, and I was so excited that you asked this question because it's like either people are already doing it or avoiding it. The question is, how do I turn my kitchen into a gluten-free kitchen? And it's a process. Oh, is it a process? So I have a strategy. I have a cookbook that I just published in this year called Epicurean Awakening. And inside here, I have a starter kit for what you do. It's something I did with doctors. I used to work for doctors, and they would ask me to help their clients or patients be gluten free. And I learned a lot from that experience. This was like 30 years ago. I learned a lot. I learned that people have a lot of resistance. And so you have to kind of have a strategy. And so I'm going to actually show you what I have in here. I have I have a thing that says, let's get started. Because it's like, where do you start? And so I'm going to read to you the 7 steps I have for a basic starter kit. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, number one, and it's not just for converting the kitchen to the. I mean, I don't. Do you? Are you a whole foods plant-based diet, or are you just gluten free?
Um, I'm on Whole Foods. I don't know what plant-based means. I drink raw milk. I eat grass-fed, finished, meat. So I don't know what.
The whole food plant-based, some people would say is also a vegan thing,
Yeah.
but
Um,
but but not everybody who's vegan would label it as vegan. They would label it as a whole food plant-based diet because not all people that are vegan are healthy.
that's true too. Yeah. No, I just
Yeah,
uh,
there's a lot of vegans that eat a lot of wheat. There's a lot of vegans that eat a lot of sugar. There's a lot of vegans that eat a lot of processed foods.
yeah.
And so
I
go ahead.
I just try not to eat processed foods and
Right.
make more as organic as I can. So.
So I have because I am I call this clean eating. You know, you can call it whatever you want, but I call it clean eating because I have to be off of oil and sugar. And so I have a whole other level of how do you get your pantry not only gluten free, but it has to be oil free and sugar free. And when I say sugar free, I don't use anything that has even coconut sugar in it or date syrup. Like I use stevia, xylitol, and monk fruit only. So
Oh,
I have a very different perspective. I actually have a cooking video companion cooking program called This Is Not Your Grandmother's Cooking Class. And it's designed for going along. It's a companion to the book, and it educates and introduces, and there's Q&A in the back because people at the end of each um, class, I'd have people ask me questions. And so it has a lot of ways of following along with the book, which I really appreciate because people that have never eaten this way have no idea where to start. They have no idea what to do. They have no idea where to get the food. They just don't know. And so one of the things that I do is I get 3 boxes. This is my starter. So you get 3 boxes, and you're going to label the boxes keep, throw away, and give away. This is
okay.
the foolproof strategy. You're going to start either in your refrigerator or in a cabinet. So say you start in the refrigerator or freezer. You pull everything out. You empty your refrigerator completely.
Well,
And
when
what
we'll
was
be doing that.
that?
When
What?
I move, I'll definitely be doing that.
Yes. So what you do is you read the labels. You read the labels.
Mhm.
And, anything that has dyes in it, you throw away or you give away. Anything that you have wheat in it, you put in depends how old it is. I mean, we have stuff in the fridge for 10 years ago. How many salad dressing bottles are sitting there that are just like, they're anchors. That's actually what it is. It's an anchor. It's an anchor to say, I'm attached to you. I'm not going to let you go because I'm afraid that I won't have anything left if I let you go. I mean, it's a really emotional road. People that lose weight, that have to lose a lot of weight, understand the journey it's not about the weight, it's about the journey of losing the weight because you're losing attachments. And as you lose attachments, it's emotional because um, you have so many projections. Your kids are mad at you for not buying the same food. Your husband is mad at you for having to force you on a diet that you don't want to be on. You're you're playing with the emotions of familiar foods and comfort foods versus everyone says gluten-free foods taste like cardboard, and it's not true. I used to be a pastry chef for a really long time. I was cooking foods that were against my, like, they don't work for me, especially the sugar. And I remember, I'd make 10,000 cookies for the Chicago Fair every once a month for the weekend, and every child that would get my cookie, I'd be like, I'm sorry. Like I was like 23 years old, I needed to pay rent, I needed to work, and I also knew I had a sugar allergy, and I'm working with ingredients that were against they worked against me, and so I couldn't eat stuff because if I did I would have serious mood swings, and I would have a lot of reactions, although my doctor will be the first to tell you that sugar does not cause an allergic reaction. So when you break out in hives because you've eaten sugar, tell that to them who's having to tell you it just doesn't work that way. And I'll be like, it's not your body. I understand you believe that, but if it's your body and you eat this and this happens, you have to start rethinking how you do things. And so I've been sugar free, I don't know, a long time, probably 40 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've had to live a
That-
life, and I have moments that I falter, and then I regret it, and then I'm like, damn, why did I do that? So it's a practice, I make a commitment and then I stick to it. But then, someone's like, here, have this, and I'll be like, it's just once, and then that just once takes me down the rabbit hole. I had a year and a half of hives one time, and I can tell you that a year and a half of hives is long enough to say I don't ever want to get that again.
Right.
A lot of unknown, and it's a toxic load, and it's a lot of things that you just, it's like, it's hard to process. It's hard to be around anyone that doesn't understand the chemistry of the body. And so it's multiple things. It's a toxic environment, it's a toxic body, it's a toxic world, it's 5G, it could be many things. It depends on how sensitive you are. And I've always been sensitive to sugar. So there you go. Um, so you get the three boxes and you read the ingredients, and anything that has any language of wheat in it, soy is wheat based, like soy sauce has wheat in it. Believe it or not, there's a lot of things that have wheat in it. You'd be surprised at how many seasonings that people have wheat in it. So you just have to really read ingredients. And if you're trying to be vegan, you have a whole other level of doing this. But if you're looking to avoid dyes or chemicals or things, you just want to be able to read the ingredients and not be like, what does this mean? Because there are
Right.
some sugars, like isomalt sugar, is fine to have because it doesn't have a reaction in the body. It's a very different kind of sugar, and it's used for making shapes like lollipops, and it can be used very magically for people that are sugar intolerant. And you can also, I use a lot of inulin. Inulin is a sugar replacer and a fat replacer, and it's a prebiotic, so it's actually good for your gut. And so I try to use things that are not only beneficial for the body, but are creative in use. So when I make ice cream with inulin and stevia, liquid stevia. It works like a charm. It's pretty
Oh,
amazing. I have kids, and so I have a lot of recipes that I try on a lot of sixth graders, fifth graders, fourth graders, third graders, second graders. I've been doing this for years, so if the whole class likes it, then I know it's a good recipe. If kids like it, it will work. So it's super fun to have. Um, it's super fun. It's just super fun. So what you're going to do is take your 3 boxes and you're going to have your foods that you're throwing away because they're expired and they're old and they're half used, no one's going to want something that's half used. And so that's your throwaway box. Your giveaway box is going to be the things that people will eat, they haven't been opened or they've been sitting in your cabinet. I have things in my cabinet that, like, every time I go into the cabinet, because I have my stuff and I have my kids' stuff, and there's stuff in there that they just don't look at. They don't look. I have crackers in there that have been there for 2 years, and I'm like, I know they're stale.
I see things.
What was that?
I can say that about a few things.
Oh yeah, we all do. Like there's not any shame in it. It's a habit and it's an anchor and it means something emotionally. It means that there's like it just it's interesting because how we do anything is how we do life. How we do anything is how we do everything. And so if we behave a certain way consistently, that's how we do life. And when we want to change a habit, we have to be really motivated. And so, like, when I wrote the cookbook and when I was talking to my doctor and I was on this no oil thing, and I said, "This is the do or die diet, isn't it?" And he's like, "It is." I said, "If I don't do it, I die." And he's like, "You do." And I'm like, "Okay, that's pretty good motivation."
So like olive oil or
No
is it
oil. No,
oil?
all oils. There's a mechanism in the brain that is connected with celiac disease that oxidizes the brain. That when you use the linolenic and linoleic acids, the omega-3 and omega-6s, they're toxic to the body. And in the forward of the cookbook, this naturopath, he's friends with Dr. Esselstyn, who wrote Forks Over Knives, and he has this very intelligent explanation of how celiac is formed. However, because the words were too over my head, I had to have it dumbed down to a very like a receivable, digestible understanding. And I know high schoolers that have certain illnesses and the description of what they've gone through and the description of how celiac is created is identical to how he's writing. And it can be 100% avoided. And in the, Dr. Esselstyn is all about reversing heart disease and having a no oil diet. No olive oil, no coconut oil, no processed oils, no synthetic oils. You can have nuts and seeds, you can have nut butters and seed butters. And people with allergies, macadamia is a seed, it's not a nut. And so 95% of the people that can't have nuts can have macadamians because it's considered a seed and it's very allergy friendly. And so I make a macadamia cauliflower ricotta cheese that goes inside, or a pesto that goes inside a ravioli that is, incredibly allergy friendly. People can eat that. And it's not just It's just fun. It's been really fun creating these recipes. And so when we are resisting that which we are asking to have, it's like people that say, I want to do this, and then the opposite shows up. I want to lose weight, and then they gain weight. I want to more money, and then the bill comes in and they owe more money. There's a there's a I don't know what the word is. There's a well, I do know it's called the backwards law. There's a way that we effort life, that efforting thing. Instead of receiving things, we effort. And in the efforting, we stop ourselves from receiving. And so that's called struggle. And whenever we struggle, there's something that we're trying to prove. So we're either trying to prove that we're right and the other person's wrong, or we're trying to um, avoid, or we're trying to sabotage ourselves. And so making food for your family who have allergies is easier than taking care of yourself, because that means you have to have the value and the worthiness of yourself to do it for yourself. So it's so much easier to do it for someone else. And and so going through your kitchen is kind of like cleaning clutter. And I learned a long time ago that clutter is attachments. And so when you have clutter in the kitchen, you're letting go of the attachments to what they are. And if your health depends on it, then you have to do this. You just have to. And if
I,
it's,
I think for me, I think it's because I made a decision to buy that, and now if I throw it away, I made a bad decision. It was something stupid. I shouldn't have done it. And so if I keep it, then it wasn't a bad decision, and I will use it in the future. And that's my mentality.
I'm right there with you. I can go in my kitchen right now and I can easily pull a box of, when do you think you're going to eat this? When do you think?
Yeah.
And I know what an anchor is, and I'm like, okay. My kids, like, I've had these gluten-free ice cream cones in my cabinet for over a year, and I decided to move one. I decided to move it closer to the edge. And my son, he's now 12, he found them finally. And he's like, "Can you let me know when we have ice cream again so I can have one of these cones?" And I said, it's an interesting thing. When you start actually investigating, you'll start seeing that we have things that match the things that you want. He's like, "We have ice cream?" I said, "We do." "Really?" I said, "We do." And and he's like, "Where?" And so I opened up the freezer and I said, "Probably right in front of you." And then he found it and he was just like, "I didn't know that was there." I said, "Obviously, because it's been in there." And so,
Wow.
yeah, I have a cardamom ginger ice cream that's amazing. I love the flavor of cardamom. And I make a carrot cake and I use a cardamom ginger frosting for it too. And so natural learning is the best learning. And so when you see that you have things that you're judging and how long they've been sitting in your cabinet, and if I throw it away, then it must have been a bad choice, you're basing it on who you used to be and not where you are right now. And I
Mm,
can guarantee you that if you go back to when you bought that, I do not believe you were judging yourself out of a bad choice. I believe that you thought at that time you were making a smart choice.
yeah.
And so it's kind of like finding the gratitude for the choices you made and the forgiveness for the choices you were, because we always evolve. There are things that I'm doing now that I never had to do before and that I have to do now. And I'm just like, I could look at my list of foods I can't eat and be really in the lack of, I can't have this. I mean, people that know me, they're like, "What can you eat?" And I'm like, I have 484 pages of foods I can eat. I mean, I have my son asked for donuts for his birthday that I make because they're so good. You can turn them into cake pops. You can, when we have, they're musicians, and so when we have like orchestras, things, and we have to have food afterwards. I always bring something. And so I think I brought, what did I bring last time? I brought ice cream and brownies or something. And I had little Dixie cups so that they could like put it on top of it. And they were just like, this is vegan? I'm like, it is. This doesn't have sugar in it? I'm like, it doesn't. And they're like, where are you getting the flavor? I'm like, I know what I'm doing. It doesn't have to, like, people just don't know. And so it's like, I have to educate, but I have, when do I educate? Like I have so much going on. It's hard for me to break my day into the structure that would bring forward the information that, like, I just need people to start, I need to get on the radar for people to start seeing what I can offer. I have lots of videos, I just haven't put them, I was separating out my YouTube channel between coaching and food. And so I had to unlist everything so that I could then separate it out, and then life keeps happening, and so it looks like I don't have anything on my YouTube channel, but I have like thousands of videos. I have like 15,000 photos in my camera. Talk about attachments.
Oh,
What was that?
well, I'm afraid to delete them because I might need them because
I
obviously I have them because I would want them, and so now I can't decide to not want them anymore.
exactly. We are so predictable when it comes to attachments and letting go. And so when you look at the end of your life, none of it matters.
Right.
None of it matters. None of it matters. None of it. You know, there's a beautiful line that, or quote that I like. You never know which is going to come. Well, how does it start? Life is like a bubble. You never know which is going to come next. You never know which is going to come first, tomorrow or the next world. And so it's having to live in gratitude and having to live with knowing that everything is impermanent and not make things significant, and trust that when you let it go, it's okay. You'll be okay. I'll be okay. Whatever we need will come back if we really need it. And as
Right.
and as we age, as we go through life, what used to matter back 30 years ago doesn't matter now. It just doesn't. Life is so different. We didn't have cell phones. We, we didn't have technology. We just we relied on communication, and we relied on the telephone. And I had a dial tone. Yeah, it's like kids have no idea when I say to them, the younger millennials, how I lived without a cell phone, and they're like, I lived without needing technology, and they're like, I can't comprehend. I'm like, I understand. My kids can. I've made sure that they don't until they're older. And so they know what it's like to not, I said, you have your whole life to be on a computer. You don't need it right now. You have your whole life to watch movies. You don't need it right now. Because it feeds your psyche, and until your psyche knows who you are, then there's no reason to put the story of someone else's perspective in you before you know who you are.
Right.
And so food kind of has that same language, because food is comfort, food is social, food is fun, food tastes good, food is pleasurable, food hurts us, food makes us sick, food makes us have allergies, foods make us suffer. Foods have both dynamics. And when we strategize and ask the questions, how may I love myself even more? How may I love my body even more? When you start asking these simple questions, you're going to naturally reach for the healthy thing, naturally, because you're coming from a place of loving yourself. And self-hatred is so prevalent, and self-abuse is so prevalent, that you reach for the thing that's going to be toxic. And so you're in a toxic relationship, you're in a toxic environment, you eat toxic foods, and your brain goes dumbed down, and your brain goes foggy, and your body is sluggish, and you are in a state of numbness so that you can live in a world and not have to pay attention at the level that you really should be paying attention to. So it is a whole loaded conversation.
Yeah. Can I just look out the window to see if my
Yeah.
contract not here?
So you have your three boxes, you have all the things that you've put in that you want to keep, all the things you want to give away, and all the things you want to throw away. You go through all of your cabinets, all of them. And you will find that you probably have four things in the keep box. And you probably have 100 things in the giveaway box. And you probably have another 200 things in your throwaway box. And so it's like, hmm, it's interesting. Like, have you ever watched any of Gordon Ramsay's stuff on like he does something called Kitchen Nightmares, and I don't know if you've ever seen anything like that. He's
I'm
funny. So
some of his.
he'll go into restaurants and do like a makeover, like in a turnaround, and he'll go into the freezers and the refrigerators, and it tells everything. It shows how rotten the food is. It shows how freezer burnt foods are. It shows how long something has been sitting in there. It shows cross-contamination, but it really shows the lack of cleanliness and the habits that people have because they get overwhelmed by life and they don't know how to do maintenance. And so our our home has to have maintenance. Our body has to have maintenance. And if we don't maintain that, if we don't shower regularly, we smell or we're dirty. If we don't clean our kitchen regularly, then the kitchen has like 3 inches of food on the floor from not sweeping. And I know this because sometimes my kids don't ever help, and I decide to like finally sweep to show them what happens when you don't sweep. And they'll be like, really? I'll be like, really? Like, this is why I asked for help. And the stack of dishes, if they don't get cleaned, they grow mold.
Yeah,
Maintenance is a real thing, and teaching through natural learning is a really important way of teaching children. But adults, hello. Like maintenance is a real thing. You have to seal your deck, else it will rot. You have to, you,
that's what he's doing. He's
no
sealing
way.
my, yes. Yesterday he power washed it, and today he's supposed to come by and seal it. Sorry.
No, it's perfect. Maintenance is critical for us to live a healthy, long life. And people, when you're kids, take your body for granted. People in their 20s take their body for granted. People in their 30s take their body for granted. People in their 40 begin to question that. People in their 50s really start to question that. People in their 60s are now changed because they had to change, you know.
I'm in my 60s.
I would never know that.
Oh,
No, you look amazing.
um, yeah, I'm retired.
I'm just tired. I don't have to retire to know how tired I am. Oh my God. I'm a single mom with two kids. It's a two very talented kids though. So when we empty everything and give away and throw away and we face the reality that we don't have anything in our house is when you start making a list of your favorite foods. So this is the next thing you do. Come up with 10 recipes that are your favorite meals.
Hmm.
Favorite meals. Because those are the ones you eat the most.
Hmm.
And then you go and you buy the ingredients for those meals so that they're in your house and you can have them You can buy for five, or you can buy for two, or you can buy for all 10, but it allows you to have, when you open the pantry, a feel-good feeling because you've associated it with your favorite food. And when you have your favorite food, you feel good and you feel nurtured and you feel comforted. Whether it's cake, I've given my kids cake for dinner because it's nutritious when I make. And so it really is a perspective shift in your mind. And when you feel good in your kitchen, you're going to cook. And when you feel good in your kitchen, it's going to be an invitation.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you how many times when things get messy that I just open the refrigerator and I just close the refrigerator because I know I have to clean it. I know I have to shop because it's empty, or the kids are constantly telling me there's nothing to eat, but yeah, I know I can make a meal because it's not processed. And so they are learning. I mean, they're spoiled because I cook for them a lot. My older one knows how to cook. My younger one is starting to make a lot more breakfast and taking a curiosity with the recipes. He still hasn't made any effort to make a recipe from my book. And, he's a boy and he's 12, and if it was a girl, she would have already made half the book, but whatever. I know the difference between girls and boys when it comes to cooking in the kitchen. It's not a stereotype thing. It's just kind of, I see it when I go to other people's houses and their girls are all helping in the kitchen. I'll be like, it must be so nice. So my older son understands prepping, and he understands being so busy that how do I eat enough food for the week? And I said, that's where prepping comes in. I said, you make noodles, you make oat milk, you make the things that are going to make my life easier to cook for you, and you'll have a lot of food. No prep, no food. I have to prep. I come in, now I have to make the oat milk, and then I have to make this, and I have to make that, and all of a sudden, an hour goes by for the prepping, and it's late, and they have things at night they have to do music-wise, and it's frustrating because there's like no support, internal support, in order for me to support them. And so that's where, again, the gratitude comes in, and that's where habits and patterns, how you do life is how you do everything. And so if you are in the habit of avoiding or in the habit of letting other people do it for you, then you're not learning how to take care of yourself at the level that your body is asking for. And it will come back and bite you, you know.
Right.
It
Hmm.
will. It has to, because how you do anything is how you do everything, and then all of a sudden everything's breaking down around you. Your body's breaking down, your marriage is breaking down, your family's breaking down, your home is breaking down because you're not maintaining it. People just don't like doing maintenance. And then there's energy maintenance, hygiene. I call it energy hygiene. That's what showers do. It clears a lot of the energies off of our body. You're easy to talk to. I haven't had a conversation like this in a while. Do you have any questions for me?
Um, no, I didn't know what to expect, so I just came with an open mind. Um, you know, I'm interested in the book. It's not just recipes, is it though?
No, it's not. It's 88 pages I explain. I have a lot of information. I have been connected to Tibetan doctors and Ayurvedic doctors for a long time. I used to host Tibetan doctors, and I understand how food is medicine. And so I go through the different constitution of the body, where you have, like in Ayurvedic, they call it Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, but in Tibetan medicine, they call it bile, wind, and phlegm. And so we have combinations of the fire body and the earth body, or we have wind. When we get older, the winds really start to take over. And so we have more anxiety, and we're colder, or we're more brittle, or whatever it is. And so I explain a lot about the foods that balance it. And people that have allergies don't have allergies. They have a constitution that says don't eat that food. They might have a lot of fire in their body and they eat something that's really heating to their body, and now they tell everyone they have an allergy when they don't. They have a constitution that says don't eat that. But they don't know because Tibetan medicine isn't known the way I know it. And so I go through, I have a list of all the foods and all the different body types, which is really powerful because for me, I was like, why can I do this in the spring and summer? No, in the fall and winter, but in the spring and summer, I can't. And I started understanding where wheat and dairy used to impact me. And again, it comes back to the toxic load. But if I eat dairy in the fall and winter, it tames the winds, but in the spring and summer, it would make me sick. And so I started really paying attention to, like, I had acupuncture. It's like I was always trying to connect the dots until finally I had a Tibetan doctor say, because you have this constitution and because this is what you can do in these 2 months and or 2 seasons, and this is what you have to do in these 2 seasons. And so it's kind of like a bipolar body type. And I'm like, interesting information. Really?
I had me.
What was
I
that?
I said if I had that, I would say, why me? If I had, was kind of bipolar I go to an acupuncturist, so I understand the language you're talking about, but you know, um, I mean, I grew up being basically able to eat anything I wanted. And it's not that I really, yeah, I ate some junk food, but after I was diagnosed with cancer, I turned my life around. Um, but how do you know what your constitution is? I mean, I feel okay, but I can't say that,
Right,
every perfect or,
right.
they don't, I go to a functional medicine doctor, but to get that blood work done is expensive. So how do you find out what's really best for you?
By asking the question of how may I love myself even more. When you start turning into when you start turning towards your inner world instead of your outer world, because everything we do has a consequence. We choose this and it shows what happens. We either like it or we didn't like it. We like it, we don't like it. There's constant feedback, and our brain begins to develop a belief system. When I do this, that happens, therefore I can't eat that. When I do that, this happens, therefore I must be allergic to that. And so we are constantly sifting and sorting, constantly. Since we are learning how to walk, we are constantly sifting and sorting. Now take that with people and emotions and environments and our family and our lack of support, our lack of family, our lack of connection, our disconnect. And so aligning with loving yourself means that you're having faith that your inner knowing knows how to take care of you. When we get in our head, we lose the fact that we are actually a heart mind and we're just now a head. And so all we do is think, and then we start doing when I do this, that happens. When I eat this, that happens. Now I have a belief again that says I can't eat that because that happens, when it really is a toxic load. And so unraveling the toxic load, cleaning out the toxic load is what's really critical. And that's what happens when people get sick. They go on a brat diet. They only eat bananas, rice, applesauce, and toast because you were sick, and then you have to, or when you go on an allergy testing diet, you only eat certain foods and then you introduce them slowly. And
Right,
then the thing is that's missing is that you're cleaning out your system and you're putting in something, not, it doesn't necessarily mean that the idea of eating to your constitution and eating a food when you don't have a toxic body, it's really interesting. Like a true allergy is your throat closes up and you can't breathe, or you break out in hives instantaneously, like a shellfish allergy. You eat the iodine, That's a true allergy. I have an interesting gluten intolerance from the gliadin protein and not the gluten protein. But nobody understands what a gliadin is. I can't, people don't go around saying I'm gliadin intolerant. And so when I had my blood work done and it showed that I was fine with gluten, but I'm not with gliadin, would make it makes sense. I mill my own flour and I used to mill my own wheat and I would get eczema pretty hard. And I'd be like, I don't get it. And so I would be in the, all right, I can't eat wheat. So then I started eating spelt and I started eating all these other wheat alternatives and kamut, but they're still wheat based. And so when I went completely gluten free, I don't have the eczema, I don't have the things. So these are antagonists. So when you start to understand how you do life is how you do everything, then that reflects back into your world. So if life is a struggle, you're going to eat the foods that create the antagonisms, which create the inflammation, which create the story, which create the belief system, which creates the results of what it is that you're doing. When I would go to an Ayurvedic doctor, they gave me a list of all the foods I could eat. When I went to a Tibetan doctor, there was a little bit of contradictory. Some would say, don't eat meat. Others would say you have to eat meat, like red meat. And
Um,
and they would be like, well, do you want to follow Tibetan medicine or do you want to follow Ayurvedic? And I'm like, interesting question, because that Tibetan doctor got me well with his medicine. And I was with the Ayurvedic doctor for 2 years and I stalled out. And so the Tibetan doctor knew immediately because we have traumas, and when we have trauma, there's a wind that kicks in, and childbirth creates trauma, a wind trauma. And there's 13 different wind imbalances. And I had a life force wind imbalance from the childbirth of my first son. And I felt like there was like a little pin prick, and my life force was just seeping out of me. And I could feel it seeping out. It was like somebody poked a hole in me. And it was like this slow leak in a tire. And I felt my life force just leaving me. And I got really, really exhausted. And I felt like I had chronic fatigue, or I was on my way to chronic fatigue. And I met this Tibetan doctor, and he gave me medicine. In 3 days, it turned it around. In 3 days, sealed it
wow.
up. My life for it, like it completely turned everything around in 3 days. He didn't speak English. He said, do you trust me? I said, I do. He said, take this for 3 months. And I did. And everything started turning around. So
Did
again,
you have to did you have to keep taking medicine or were you healed?
um, it's seasonal. You're only as old as you'll ever be, and the environment creates your body type. It's like, how people say that we're collaborating with the angels. They're helping us, and we're a team. We're co-creating. The environment is co-creating with your constitution. So if you have a damp constitution, like you have a lot of phlegm and you're cold, and winter comes and you're eating the same foods or doing the same thing, then it's not going to help you. But if you turn that with the medicine for winter, it will turn things because you're now working together with the environment. Your environment and your body are compatible now. You're not doing cold on cold, you're doing cold on spicy. So some of the medicine has pepper. It's like peppery. And it's all food based. And then when you go into the spring, the medicine changes because the season changes and the winds rise and the warm rise, and like the driest time of the year is in the fall. And I explain this in my video in the I have a whole 2 hour video on this entire topic, and I talk about it in a chapter in the book. And so it's fascinating because when you start to understand how we have to flow with the seasons, we eat local. We eat seasonally. We're not buying stuff in from Hawaii in the middle of a time where our bodies are adjusted for the season that we're in. And so because we have access to so much, that's where the whole histamine problem becomes a histamine problem. Like a huge, like histamines have to do with eating local. You don't eat local, you're starting to take the histamines on from outside of the time you should be eating it. So if you're eating bananas from Hawaii when it's not banana season where you live, technically it's high in histamine. And your body has a toxic load. And depending on where your toxic load is, people don't have any concept that just by eating a low histamine diet, your body is going to naturally thrive. Naturally. And so you can find a Tibetan doctor, they can read your pulses. You can find an Ayurvedic doctor, they can read your pulses. They'll tell you what kind of body type you have. And then you can eat accordingly. And you still have to pay attention to the seasons. And it's a practice, and it's not something that we get automatically, which is why I coach people on how to do this, because we all need a helping hand. Like we just do. Like what I can eat 3 years ago, or what I couldn't eat 3 years ago, I can eat more today than I could 3 years ago. Like I'm less afraid of certain foods, but I'm still not going near some of them because of the hives for a year and a half. I just don't ever want to experience that again. Not for me.
That's a totally, I don't know, just a totally different way of thinking about food. And
Food can be medicine and food can be poison. People that have a very like there people that have too much heat in their body, too much fire in the body, can have a very toxic reaction to garlic because garlic is very heat creating. And
right,
so I know someone that passed out from eating garlic a lot.
wow, wow.
Stop the
Um,
garlic, stop the pass out. But he had a toxic load and he had to clean up the toxic load. And now he can eat garlic because he doesn't have the toxic load. So it's kind of like picking and choosing. It's pick your poison. You need to know when to pick it.
um, can I, I know my guide's going to come shortly. Can you text me the information about how to buy your book?
Oh, sure.
Um,
Yeah, you can actually, my website is epicureanawakening.com. And I had started a podcast and I had to stop because my book hadn't come out yet, and everyone was saying you have to focus on the book. You have to just get the book first, and then you can do all the other things you want to do. Because I wanted to do many things, the food blog and everything, and everyone's like, you have to get the book out. So I finally got the book done. Finally, and I now want to be able to jump in and play where I want to play, but I have really an intense life with my kids. And so it's like, where?
I got to get my charger. I'm on low energy.
Okay.
No, not me, my cell phone.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay.
I have a package where you can buy the video and you can buy the book. I call it Fearless in the Kitchen because
Hmm.
that's pretty much what you have to be willing to commit to experimenting and not being attached to the outcome, because we have a point of view that says I have resistance to change. I mean, that's the bottom line, is I have resistance to change. And so when we start asking the question, how may I love myself more? How may I love my body more? That resistance softens and you don't need to know the answer, and you automatically start choosing differently without having to have the resistance in the way. And so it's kind of like a little mantra. How may I love myself more? How may I love my body even more? Because it assumes that you're loving your body just a little bit. And so you want to ask, how can I do it more? It makes the assumption that you are not sabotaging or self-abusing. And so
Right.
when you can be in the how may I love myself even more, it's giving yourself credit for loving yourself some. and and when you can love yourself some, there's room for a little bit more. And it's a really sneaky backdoor hack so that you can stop doing the resistance dance to keep you from having fun in the kitchen. Because there will always, like, people will say, oh, it's so much easier to do it for my kids because they need it. You know, it's life or death for them. If they eat nuts, this will happen to them. So I met a 2-year-old that had eczema, the worst I'd ever seen ever. And she met with a Tibetan doctor when I was hosting him. And she had a very, 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 very fiery constitution. And nuts is not in her language. Nuts are very heating. And so no nuts, no nuts, no nuts, no nuts. But it doesn't mean you can't have seeds. And seed milks are hemp milk and oat milk and sesame milk and sunflower milk. Like everything is possible. Like I make
Right.
oat milk because it's cheap and it's easy. You know, it's basically 25, it's anywhere from 5 cents. If you buy organic, it might be 25 cents for 2 gallons of oat milk. I mean, you're crazy not to make your own oat milk. It's $3.79 to $5 in the grocery store. So oat milk,
Wow.
and oat milk is so easy to make. You just take a cup of oats and 4 cups of water and blend it and have a sieve that is fine enough that it pushes out all of the fiber. If you don't, then you're just going to have a big oatmeal-y mess. If you try heating it, it'll be gross. So, but to have it cold is fine. But if you try to like make an oat nog, because I have a recipe for oat nog, you will have oatmeal because it will have swollen all the fibers that were in there, and it will be like spooning a thing of paste.
Now, this is what I read or heard somewhere, the lectin or whatever it is from nut,
Lectins. Uh-huh.
isn't that in oatmeal also?
Lectins?
Yeah. Is that true? You read so much stuff, I don't know what to believe anymore.
Exactly. And so the woman that wrote the forward, the introduction on histamines, she's a nutrition coach, and she said that what happens is that there's so much information that people get confused and they don't know which to choose, so they don't choose. And it is imperative that you just pick one concept and just be with that for a while. And then you can make your own assessment. Like there was a while I didn't eat any lectins, but then I can now. I had a toxic load. I had a very toxic liver. And it wasn't anything that I was doing wrong. There was
Um,
nothing that I was doing wrong. Everything that I was doing was right, which kept me alive. I was doing cleanses, I was doing kidney cleanses regularly years, probably did 10 over 10 years. I was doing lots and lots of, I do only organic, I would do everything clean, and yet I had a very, very fatty liver. Why? Because my environment was very toxic. I was doing everything right. My generational generation. The anger goes back. How many lives, how many generations, how many my dad, my dad's dad, my dad's dad, all of that. There's a lot of anger. So when I decided to do a liver cleanse, I had no idea what was going to happen to me. It was life changing.
yeah.
Cleaned up my liver. It was not pretty and it was not fun, but I don't have a toxic liver anymore. And I mean, my doctor is like, are you like a closet alcoholic? I'm like, what? I don't drink. He's like, really? Your liver is as toxic as an alcoholic's. I'm like, how is that possible? He's like, I don't know. He's like, do you eat ice cream? I said, no.
Wow. I
Com-
know how my fatty liver was from chemo. So,
And so this book, this oil-free book, is for people that have heart issues, liver issues, inflammation, any kind of inflammation, because you're looking at antagonists. And so where I am creating this cookbook so that you do not have any antagonists, so that the toxic load can go down, so that you can then find your balance. And when you can find your footing, then you can start making choices that you can start sifting and sorting without having to feel like you're wrong for all the choices you make or coming from lack. Because when you come from lack, there's not anything that's going to go right for you.
Right.
You know, I used to, I did so many cooking classes and when I was younger, and I made turtle bars, and the person's like, well, I can't eat pecans. And I'm like, I'm making turtle bars. If you can't eat pecans, that's, try it with something else. But I am making pecans on this turtle bar because that's what the class is. And so people come to me with a constant barrage of lack because that's where their focus is. When you can come from gratitude and appreciation and abundance, there are there are thousands of foods that people don't know about. Thousands. There are so many choices. People, there's in the group I see people can't have garlic or onions or certain spices, and how can they flavor food without these? And you go to the Indian spices, the korma, the yellow curry, doesn't
Mhm.
have any onion in it. It doesn't have garlic in it. It has coriander, it has fennel, it has fenugreek. It has all these flavors that require you to explore and discover that maybe your body is actually going to be nurtured and nourished by something that you never had before. The Indian spices are incredibly balancing. And then you go to the Thai and you have lemongrass and lime and cilantro, and you have this whole other flavor palette. And no onion, no garlic.
Right.
So it's not that it's not available, it's that the receptivity to it is not available because of the focus of where you're at. And so asking the question, how may I love my body even more, begins to align you with receiving. People ask me questions like, how do I do this and how do I do that? I'm like, it starts with receiving. If you can't receive, then nothing can change. And then you can judge it that it's not working, and then you have an excuse of why it's not working, and then you can justify why it's not working, and then your external word justifies it for you, and everything comes to you because of the law of attraction, and it attracts this and attracts that and attracts that, and it's like, oh, there's the evidence, there's the evidence, there's the evidence, there's the evidence, and you have proof, and then your belief system, and you just hook, line, and sunk completely why you will never be healthy, ever. It's
Right.
not possible. And then it becomes, socially acceptable. Cancer is unbelievably socially acceptable on the masses. And cancer is 100% curable with diet. 100%. My neighbor was on the liver transplant, and I didn't know this. I didn't know her, and I was making my cooking program. And it was funny because I needed baking soda. I was making pretzels and my refrigerator had broke, and it was a hot day. It was a pain in the ass. I had to empty out everything into coolers. I had to go get coolers. It was just a really difficult day. And I was videotaping and I needed baking soda. And I went to 5 different neighbors and nobody had any. And I'm like, this is crazy. So I went to the one on the corner and I told her what was going on. She shared some stories, and I said I was doing a cookbook and making these videos, and she's like, well, what kind of cooking is it? And I told her, and she's like, that's the diet I'm on. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I never knew her, and I never knew, like, all of the testers, I could have her be my tester. And she was on the liver transplant, and she said being vegan got her off of the liver transplant list, and her health is turning around just by stopping the oil and the fats and
Wow.
letting the toxic load down. And she has doctors in Seattle that don't believe her. And so
Wow.
I talked to my doctor and I said, "Can you explain this?" And he said, "There's a split. Half the doctors believes it work, and half the doctors believe it doesn't work."
Wow.
And I'm just like, that is just shocking. She's showing them how it works and they're not believing it. But she's taking care of her because it's her do or die diet. And if you're facing, a hard choice, if I don't do this and I die, that's a choice I'm not willing to make. And so as intense as that sounds, it's kind of like temporary. It is temporary. Might not feel temporary, but it is temporary because the toxic load will go down and you will start healing and you will start turning things around, but it starts with your thoughts, which brings me back to how may I love myself even more.
Right. Yeah.
It is such a simple question that if you're willing to ask it throughout the day, your life is going to slowly turn around.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate this talk, and I'll definitely look into your website and that book.
Yeah. And you can email me any questions at Epicurean Awakening at yahoo.com and I can send you this replay.
Okay. Yeah. That'll
Wonderful.
be great. Okay.
And are
Great.
you okay if I share this video with other people to learn about some of this?
Sure, that's fine. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you so
Yeah,
much. Yeah, we appreciate it.
all right.
Um, Gives me a whole new perspective that now I have to think about.
Yeah,
But
it is. And it's one, the saying of, how do you eat an elephant? It's like it's one bite at a time. You can't shove all of this in. You just can't. It's I mean, I'm 40 years in the making here. It's not like I woke up one day. I mean, I would say the not eating sugar was kind of overnight. That was kind of a no-brainer. My hormones and my mood swings were just out of control. And I never connected the dots until I stopped eating it and then I started eating it again. And then I could see how Jekyll and Hyde I was. And I was like, oh, me and sugar, no, no, this isn't gonna work. Nope, 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 nope.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but there are a lot of young girls that have no idea, no idea. Yeah, hormones just ruin everything.
Yeah, they can.
Oh, yeah, but it comes back to the toxic load. You know, there's a lot of toxicity in the world right now, and we need a lot of kindness and we need a lot of self-love. I was I found a meme today that I love. It says fly, like, are you ready to fly? And it was F period, L period, Y period, and then it says first love yourself.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, it's taken me 55 years to hear that. I'm like, really? You needed to wait 55 years to give me that little message.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm
You're
sorry I
welcome.
have to,
Yep, it's
but
okay. I'm gonna go. Thank you.
okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.